Progressive policies mixed with a first-time candidate who has military, journalism, teaching, and farming experience. That is the pitch for Democratic Kentucky U.S. Senate candidate Mike Broihier.
He has gained traction with some important progressive figures, including earning Andrew Yang's first 2020 U.S. Senate endorsement. In fact, a post-debate poll conducted by Kentucky's Indivisible Group in March found that Mike was 88% of voters' preferred candidate following that debate. Mike joins us now via Skype to share more about his candidacy. It's great to see you, sir.
Great to see you all, too. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Mike. Just introduce yourself a little bit to our viewers. Who are you? Why are you running? And, what is it going to take to win here?
Well, a lot of people will probably hear my name for the first time. My name is Mike Broihier. I'm a retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel. I'm a farmer. My wife and I are farmers in Lincoln County, Kentucky, about an hour south of Lexington. And, I taught at UC Berkeley, but I also substitute teach in our Lincoln County public schools when the weather's too lousy to farm. As you said, I've been a rural journalist. I did that for about 5 years. And veteran, teacher, journalist and farmer. That carries a lot of weight here in Kentucky, and that's what you need to have to win to beat Mitch McConnell. You've got to be able to talk to everybody in the state.
Mm-hmm. So, Mike, tell us a little bit about why Andrew Yang endorsed you. What are the policies exactly? I assume you're a universal basic income advocate as well, but what's your policy? What are you running on there?
Well, so when I started my campaign, at the root of it was economic and social justice for all. People say sum it up in 3 sentences. I said, I can sum it up in 6 words. And it was my son, actually, who introduced me, our son, Ben, who introduced me to Andrew Yang. He was a big Yang supporter. And I called him up and said, hey, dude, what's with you and Andrew Yang? And he talked about human dignity. He talked about the respect for all work, compensated or uncompensated, and the fact that we are all shareholders in this great experiment. And it was a really elegant expression of kind of the things that I've been working through as candidate as I formed my platform way back in July. And through some fortunate happenstance, I was connected with a couple people who were working on the Yang campaign through Matt Jones of Kentucky Sports Radio. And when Andrew shuttered his federal, presidential campaign, they just started driving here to Kentucky and showing up on the farm.
And how does that message of universal basic income, which Andrew really put on the map? I mean, before Andrew, people didn't even know what it was. It wasn't very popular. By the end of his presidential campaign, it become much more popular. And now, obviously, there's sort of a bipartisan coalescing around that idea, at least momentarily, while we're dealing with this pandemic. But how has it been received in a mostly rural state like Kentucky?
Well, I always, when people start, wondering about this, when I'm talking about it, I always pose the question to them and say, how different would your life be if you received $1,200 a month? I was doing an interview similar to this a couple of nights ago, and there's a window beyond the camera here, and my neighbor is a farmer, and he was out repairing the fence between our properties in the headlights of his pickup truck because he has to have another job to keep money coming into the farm. And if I'm guessing that if he had a universal basic income, he would give up his day job in a heartbeat because he's a great farmer and he loves what he does. He's a good steward of the land, but he has to work so he can farm to provide food for his neighbors in our community. So when you pose it as a form of a question, all of a sudden you see the gears turning. People are like, my life would be significantly different. But not once do people say, I'm never going to go to work again.
So, Mike, let me ask you this, which is that we've had Charles Booker on the show. I think he's been endorsed by the legislature. We've covered Amy McGrath's race. She's got millions of dollars. What is your realistic path to victory here?
Well, I think that graph that you showed probably tells the whole story. That when people see us side by side, they say, "Well, hands down, this is our guy. He has a huge breadth of experience." Around the world, but he's a farmer in Kentucky, and he could talk to farm, kitchen table issues. He teaches our kids in our public schools, and so the difference between me and the other 2 candidates is grassroots support here in Kentucky. I started picking up indivisible endorsements, and as I'm sure you're aware, when we replaced our governor last year in November, it was largely the work of teachers and indivisible, the door knockers, the phone bankers, the texters. And they are the ones who've supported me. And it's been great. I picked up the support of former presidential candidate Marianne Williamson. And then the Yang endorsements have been huge. There were features in Rolling Stone and features in Newsweek magazine. But the most important thing, no matter how much money is coming in from out of state, and no matter how much press someone gets out of state, the only people who matter in this election are the voters of Kentucky.
Yeah. And Mike, one of the things we talked to Charles about yesterday, to Representative Booker about yesterday, was bridging that urban, rural, and also that racial divide. And that, has become even more critical in light of what we're seeing unfolding across the country in Minneapolis, but also in Louisville, Kentucky. How do you bring people together across those divides that exist not only in Kentucky, but across the nation?
Well, I think that in part that's a manufactured divide. I think that there are that people in rural areas are facing the same kind of lack of access to healthcare, challenges for to have a decent job, for their kids to go to good schools. So, in a way, I think that is kind of one of Mitch McConnell's old ploys is to pit people against each other. And I think that, one thing, and Crystal, you've spent plenty of time here in Kentucky, you understand that people in Kentucky have got a keen sense of fairness and common sense, and they know right from wrong. And I think that there is no space at all between the sense of people in rural Kentucky and urban Kentucky, in urban Kentucky about what we've seen in Louisville with the killing of Breonna Taylor, or the violence in Minneapolis, or in Tilla Flats, Georgia. People here in Kentucky are decent folks. They've got a keen sense of justice and fairness, and they know wrong when they see it.
All right, Mike. Well, good luck on the campaign. Thanks so much for being with us today. Tell people where they can go to check you out.
Sure, they can go to mikeforky.com, mikeforky.com, and if they can't donate, things are tough in the time of pandemic, they can go to /signup and become, a volunteer and get the word out, because we're going to take the heat to Mitch McConnell and replace him this November.
All right,
well,
good
thanks,
deal.
Mike. Appreciate
Thank you, Mike.
the update.
Good to have you.
And we will have more Rising for you after this.